What happens when an entitled duchess meets late-night television's most unpredictable host? The answer might shock you. Tonight, we're diving into one of the most explosive celebrity meltdowns ever captured on live television, a confrontation. So intense that it ended with security being called and a guest being physically escorted from the studio. This is the untold story of how Meghan Markle's appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live turned into an absolute disaster that left audiences speechless and producers scrambling. Make sure to subscribe and drop a comment below because this story has more twists than you can imagine. The tension was palpable from the moment Meghan walked onto the Jimmy Kimmel Live set. Studio audience members later described an immediate shift in atmosphere, as if everyone could sense that something was about to go very wrong. Meghan had agreed to appear on the show to promote her latest venture, but what was supposed to be a standard celebrity interview quickly transformed into something far more dramatic. Jimmy Kimmel, known for his quick wit and ability to handle difficult guests, seemed unusually cautious as he introduced his guest. "Please welcome Meghan Markle," he announced, his usual enthusiasm noticeably subdued. The applause was polite but not overwhelming, and Meghan's entrance was marked by an air of superiority that immediately caught the attention of everyone present. From the very first exchange, it was clear that Meghan had come with her own agenda. When Jimmy attempted his usual warm welcome, asking how she was doing, Meghan's response was surprisingly cold. "I'm doing well, though I have to say, I expected a bit more from your production team," she said, her voice carrying a tone that suggested she was already displeased with something. Jimmy, ever the professional, tried to laugh it off. "Oh, what's wrong? Did they not get your rider right? Please tell me we didn't mess up the green tea situation," he joked, referring to the common celebrity demands for specific refreshments in their dressing rooms. But Meghan wasn't in the mood for jokes. "Actually, yes, that's exactly the problem. I specifically requested that my dressing room be set to exactly 72 degrees, not 73, not 71. I also asked for spring water from a specific brand, not tap water in fancy bottles. These details matter, Jimmy, and frankly, I'm surprised your team doesn't understand that." The studio audience began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. This wasn't the light-hearted banter they had come to expect from Jimmy Kimmel Live. Jimmy himself seemed taken aback by the harsh criticism, but he maintained his composure. "Well, I apologize for that. We'll definitely make sure to get those details right next time. But hey, you're here now, and that's what matters. Let's talk about what you're working on." Meghan's expression didn't soften. "I suppose we can try. Though I have to say, I'm already feeling like this interview isn't going to go the way I had planned. Your questions better be more substantial than your usual celebrity fluff. I'm not here to talk about my favorite color or what I had for breakfast." Jimmy's eyebrows raised slightly. "Okay, fair enough. Let's dive into something more substantial. Then, you've been pretty vocal about various social issues lately. Some people have criticized you for speaking out on topics when you're no longer working as a senior royal. How do you respond to that?" The question seemed to hit a nerve immediately. Meghan's posture straightened, and her voice took on a sharp edge. "Excuse me? Are you seriously suggesting that I don't have the right to speak about issues that matter to me? Just because I stepped back from royal duties doesn't mean I stopped being a human being with opinions and values." No, that's not what I'm saying at all," Jimmy replied, trying to clarify. "I'm just asking how you handle the criticism. It's a pretty standard question for someone in your position." "Standard question?" Meghan's voice rose slightly. "Jimmy, I came here expecting intelligent discourse, not the same tired talking points that every other interviewer has thrown at me. Do you have any original thoughts, or are you just going to recycle what everyone else has already asked?" The tension in the studio was becoming unbearable. Audience members were looking at each other with expressions of discomfort and disbelief. This was not what anyone had signed up for when they came to see a taping of Jimmy Kimmel Live. Jimmy, still trying to salvage the interview, took a different approach. "You know what? You're absolutely right. Let me ask you something different. What's the biggest misconception people have about you?" Meghan paused for a moment, as if considering whether this question met her standards. "Finally, a question worth answering," she said with a condescending smile. "The biggest misconception is that people think I should be grateful for the platform I was given, as if I didn't bring anything to the table myself. I was a successful actress, a humanitarian, a woman with her own voice and her own mission long. Before I met Harry. Absolutely, Jimmy agreed, nodding. Your work on Suits was really popular, and you were involved in various charitable causes. But some people argue that your global platform really expanded after joining the royal family. Is that fair to say? And that's when everything went completely sideways. Meghan's face flushed with anger, and she leaned forward in her chair, pointing a finger directly at Jimmy. Are you kidding me right now? Are you actually sitting there suggesting that I owe my success to marrying into the royal family? Do you have any idea how insulting that is? Jimmy immediately tried to backtrack. That's not what I meant at all. I was just acknowledging that your platform grew, which isn't unusual for anyone who joins the royal family. I wasn't diminishing your previous work. Oh, please, Meghan shot back, her voice now loud enough that the audience could hear every word clearly. Don't try to walk it back now. You just suggested that everything I've accomplished is because of who I married. That's exactly the kind of sexist, reductive thinking that I've been fighting against my entire career. The situation was spiraling out of control, and Jimmy was struggling to regain any semblance of normal interview flow. Meghan, I think there's been a misunderstanding here. Maybe we should take a quick break and reset. No, we're not taking a break, Meghan declared firmly. I want to address this right now, on camera, because this is exactly the problem. You invite me on your show, you ask me insulting questions, and then when I call you out on it, you want to sweep it under the rug with a commercial break. That's not how this works, Jimmy. Jimmy looked visibly uncomfortable as he realized there was no escape from this rapidly deteriorating situation. The studio audience sat in stunned silence, witnessing what was quickly becoming one of the most awkward moments in late-night television history. Production assistants could be seen in the background making frantic gestures, clearly unsure of how to handle this unprecedented situation. Okay, Meghan, let's address it then, Jimmy said, his voice steady but strained. I genuinely didn't mean to offend you. I was simply acknowledging that joining the royal family naturally comes with increased global attention. That's just a fact, not a judgment on your previous accomplishments. Meghan crossed her arms and leaned back in her chair with a look of complete disdain. A fact? Jimmy, let me tell you what's a fact. I was making a difference in this world, long before I ever stepped foot in a palace. I was using my voice, my platform, my influence to fight for women's rights, for social justice, for equality. But apparently, in your mind, none of that matters because you think everything I am is because of a marriage. That's really not what I think, Jimmy protested. Look, I've interviewed hundreds of celebrities, and I always try to be respectful. If I misspoke, I apologize, but I think you might be reading more into this than what was actually said. The suggestion that she was overreacting seemed to infuriate Meghan even more. She sat forward abruptly, her voice rising to a level that was becoming uncomfortable for everyone present. Oh, so now I'm being too sensitive? Now I'm reading too much into it. This is exactly what happens every single time. A woman stands up for herself, calls out inappropriate behavior, and immediately she's told she's overreacting or being too emotional. Jimmy ran his hand through his hair, clearly struggling with how to respond. I'm not saying you're being too emotional. I'm just trying to understand where this anger is coming from because I honestly don't think we're as far apart on this as you seem to believe. Where this anger is coming from, Meghan repeated incredulously. Jimmy, do you have any idea what it's like to have your entire identity, your entire life's work, reduced to who you married? Do you know what it's like to have people constantly question whether you deserve the platform you have? Actually, I do understand that to some degree, Jimmy replied, trying to find common ground. I've been criticized plenty of times for not deserving this job, for not being funny enough, for not being smart enough. Criticism comes with any public platform. This comparison seemed to enrage Meghan beyond belief. She stood up from her chair, towering over Jimmy's desk in a display of aggression that shocked everyone in the studio. Are you seriously comparing your experience as a white male talk show host to what I've endured as a biracial woman who married into the most scrutinized family in the world? Are you actually that tone deaf? The audience gasped audibly. Several people could be heard whispering to each other, and some were pulling out their phones to record what was happening. Jimmy looked up at Meghan, who was now standing and clearly agitated, and tried to de-escalate the situation. Meghan, please sit down. You're right. Our experiences aren't the same, and I shouldn't have made that comparison. Can we please just Try to have a conversation here." "No, Jimmy, I will not sit down," Meghan declared, her voice now echoing throughout the studio. "I will not be told to calm down, I will not be told to sit down, and I will not pretend that this conversation is going well when you've spent the last 10 minutes insulting me and minimizing my achievements." Jimmy looked toward his producers offstage, clearly seeking guidance on how to handle this unprecedented situation. "Meghan, I promise you, I have not been trying to insult you. If that's how it came across, then I sincerely apologize. But right now, you're making this really difficult for everyone here." "I'm making this difficult?" Meghan laughed bitterly. "Jimmy, you invited me here under false pretenses. You told my team this would be a respectful interview about my current projects. Instead, you've spent the entire time questioning my credibility and suggesting that I don't deserve the platform I have. And now you have the audacity to blame me for the fact that this interview is going poorly." The situation was becoming more volatile by the second. Jimmy stood up from behind his desk, perhaps thinking that meeting Meghan at eye level might help calm things down. "Look, I think we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. Why don't we start over? I'll ask you about your current projects, and we can have the interview you wanted to have." Meghan shook her head vigorously. "Oh no, we're not starting over. We're not pretending this didn't happen. You don't get to insult me for 15 minutes and then act like everything is fine just because you realized you messed up. That's not how accountability works, Jimmy. What do you want from me then?" Jimmy asked, his patience clearly wearing thin. "I've apologized multiple times. I've acknowledged that I misspoke. What else can I do here?" "What I want," Meghan said, her voice becoming increasingly shrill, "is for you to admit that you came into this interview with preconceived notions about me. I want you to admit that you were planning to ask me gotcha questions designed to make me look bad. I want you to acknowledge that this entire setup was designed to embarrass me." Jimmy looked genuinely confused by this accusation. "Meghan, that's absolutely not true. We don't ambush our guests here. We're not investigative journalists trying to take people down. We're a comedy show that does lighthearted interviews with celebrities." "Lighthearted?" Meghan scoffed. "There was nothing lighthearted about suggesting that my entire career is meaningless without my marriage. There was nothing lighthearted about questioning whether I have the right to speak about issues I care about. You've been hostile from the moment I sat down." At this point, Jimmy's own frustration was beginning to show. "Meghan, I asked you two standard interview questions. I asked about criticism you've received, and I acknowledged that your platform grew after joining the royal family. These are not hostile questions. These are normal questions that any interviewer would ask." "Normal for who?" Meghan shot back. "Normal for someone who thinks a woman's accomplishments don't matter? Normal for someone who believes that a woman only has value through her relationships with men? Because that's exactly what your questions implied, Jimmy." The tension had reached a breaking point. Jimmy looked around the studio, clearly at a loss for how to proceed. The audience was completely silent, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. Production crew members were gathered along the edges of the set, unsure whether they should intervene or let this play out. "You know what, Meghan?" Jimmy said finally, his voice taking on a firmer tone. "I've tried to be respectful here. I've apologized repeatedly, and I've acknowledged where I might have misspoken. But you're not interested in having a conversation. You're interested in having a fight, and I'm not going to keep participating in this." This statement seemed to be the final straw for Meghan. Her face turned red with rage, and she pointed an accusatory finger directly at Jimmy's face. "Don't you dare try to turn this around on me. Don't you dare suggest that I came here looking for a fight when you're the one who has been attacking me from the beginning. This is exactly what I expected from someone like you." "Someone like me?" Jimmy repeated, his own anger finally beginning to surface. "What exactly does that mean, Meghan?" Meghan's eyes flashed with something that looked almost dangerous as she leaned closer to Jimmy's desk. "Someone like you means someone who thinks they can disrespect me and get away with it. Someone who believes they can tear down a strong woman just because they have a platform and a microphone. Someone who clearly has no understanding of what real struggle looks like." Jimmy stared at her in disbelief. "Meghan, you've been insulting me, my staff, and my show from the moment you walked out here. You've accused me of things I never said and intentions I never had. And now you're lecturing me about respect? I'm telling you the truth," Meghan shot back, her voice echoing through the stunned studio. "The truth that you clearly can't handle. The truth that you brought me here to humiliate me And when I refused to play along with your little game, you got upset. What game? Jimmy asked, his voice rising to match hers. Meghan, I asked you about your work and about criticism you've received. That's literally what every talk show host asks every guest. If that's a game to you, then maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews. The suggestion that she shouldn't be doing interviews seemed to send Meghan into a complete fury. She slammed her hand down on Jimmy's desk so hard that his coffee mug jumped, spilling liquid across his notes. How dare you suggest that I shouldn't be doing interviews? How dare you try to silence me? Jimmy looked down at his ruined notes and then back up at Meghan with an expression of complete bewilderment. I'm not trying to silence you, Meghan. Trust me, you're being heard loud and clear by everyone in this building right now. Good, Meghan declared triumphantly. Because I want everyone to see exactly what kind of person you really are. I want them to see how you treat women who don't bow down to you. I want them to understand what I've been dealing with. At this point, several audience members were openly filming with their phones, despite studio policies against recording. The situation had become so surreal that normal rules seemed to have been suspended. Jimmy noticed the phones and looked toward his production team with an expression that clearly said he needed help. Meghan, look around, Jimmy said, gesturing to the shocked faces in the audience. Look at what's happening here. This isn't normal. This isn't how interviews work. You're creating a scene that's making everyone uncomfortable. I'm creating a scene. Meghan laughed hysterically. Jimmy, you created this scene the moment you decided to disrespect me. I'm just refusing to pretend everything is fine when it's clearly not. Jimmy took a deep breath, clearly trying to maintain whatever professionalism he had left. Okay, Meghan, I think we need to end this interview. I think it's best for everyone if we just call it here. Oh no, Meghan said, shaking her head vigorously. We are not ending this interview until you apologize properly. Not some fake Hollywood apology, but a real acknowledgement of what you've done here tonight. What I've done, Jimmy repeated incredulously. Meghan, what I've done is try to conduct a professional interview while you've spent the entire time attacking me, my staff, and my show. What I've done is show remarkable patience with behavior that, frankly, no other host would tolerate. This seemed to be the final breaking point. Meghan's face contorted with rage, and she began speaking so rapidly and loudly that her words became difficult to follow. Remarkable patience? You think you've shown patience? Jimmy, you have no idea what patience looks like. Patience is what I've shown dealing with people like you my entire life. Patience is what I've shown trying to educate ignorant people who think they know better than I do about my own experiences. People like me again, Jimmy said, his own anger finally boiling over. You keep saying that phrase, Meghan, and I'm starting to think it says more about your prejudices than mine. The accusation of prejudice seemed to completely unhinged Meghan. She began pacing back and forth in front of Jimmy's desk, waving her arms and speaking in a voice so loud it was practically shouting. My prejudices? Are you seriously going to sit there and accuse me of being prejudiced? Do you have any idea how ridiculous that sounds coming from someone in your position? My position? Jimmy stood up again, clearly having reached his limit. Meghan, my position is trying to do my job while you have a complete meltdown on live television. My position is trying to be professional while you insult everyone around you. Don't you dare call this a meltdown, Meghan screamed, now completely out of control. This is me standing up for myself against someone who clearly has no respect for women, no respect for people of color, and no respect for anyone who doesn't fit into his narrow little worldview. The accusations were becoming increasingly wild and baseless. Jimmy looked around the studio desperately and finally made a gesture toward his producers that everyone understood as a call for help. Within seconds, 2 security guards appeared at the edges of the stage. What is this? Meghan demanded, noticing the security presence. Are you seriously calling security on me? Are you that threatened by a woman who refuses to be silenced? Meghan, you're out of control, Jimmy said firmly. You've been shouting, you've been making accusations, you spilled coffee all over my desk, and you're making everyone here extremely uncomfortable. This interview is over. This interview is over when I say it's over, Meghan declared, turning to face the security guards who were slowly approaching. Don't you dare touch me. I am not leaving until this man apologizes for his behavior. One of the security guards, a large man with a calm demeanor, spoke in a gentle but firm voice. Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us. The interview is finished. I will not be escorted out like some common criminal, Meghan shouted, backing away from the approaching guards. I came here as a guest, and I deserve to be treated with respect. Jimmy, still standing behind his desk, addressed the audience directly for the first time since the confrontation began. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for what you've witnessed here tonight. This is not the kind of show we normally run, and I'm sorry you had to see this. Meghan whirled around to face him, fury radiating from every fiber of her being. Don't you dare apologize for me, Jimmy. Don't you dare try to make me look like the problem here when you know exactly what you did. The security guards moved closer, clearly prepared to physically escort Meghan from the studio if necessary. Ma'am, please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be, one of them said quietly. More difficult? Meghan laughed bitterly. You people have no idea what difficult looks like. But you're about to find out, because I am not going quietly. Everyone is going to know exactly what happened here tonight. As the guards finally reached her, Meghan made one last desperate attempt to address the audience directly. Don't believe what they tell you about this interview, she shouted over the guards' attempts to guide her away. Don't let them spin this story. You saw what really happened here. Jimmy watched as Meghan was finally escorted off the stage, still shouting and making threats about exposing the truth. The studio fell into an eerie silence, broken only by the sound of Meghan's voice fading as she was led away from the set. Turning back to his stunned audience, Jimmy took a moment to collect himself before speaking. Well, folks, that was certainly not what any of us expected tonight. I want to thank you all for your patience during what was obviously a very difficult situation. The audience began to applaud, whether out of relief, support for Jimmy, or simply because they didn't know what else to do. Jimmy managed a weak smile and continued. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll try to salvage what's left of tonight's show. As the cameras stopped rolling and the audience continued to buzz with shocked conversation, it was clear that everyone present had witnessed something unprecedented in late-night television history. The interview that was supposed to promote Meghan's latest project had instead become a masterclass in how not to conduct yourself as a guest, leaving everyone involved wondering how such a simple conversation had spiraled so completely out of control. The footage from that night would become legendary, not for the reasons Meghan had hoped, but as a cautionary tale about entitlement, professionalism, and the importance of knowing when to admit you might be wrong. So what do you think really triggered Meghan's explosive reaction that night? Was it Jimmy's questions, or was there something deeper going on? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories like this one.